Hey there, and welcome once again to another edition of Strange Planet. And if you'd like to get deeper into Strange Planet, you know what to do. Just click on that link in the episode description, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening, bonus episodes that are produced just for you, and a subscription to my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum. Again, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. There are 3 monthly tiers to choose from. Choose the one that's right for you and enjoy. strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. All right, we're going to dive back into the David Grusch controversy or a sensational story, about the Pentagon whistleblower who has claimed that the U.S. has collected alien UFOs over the years. He testified to that fact in Congress, and more recently has made the headlines again for saying that America retrieved a UFO from World War II Italian dictator Benito Mussolini after getting a tip from Pope Pius XII. And Grusch, of course, is an Air Force veteran, former intelligence official, claimed the Vatican was involved in the first ever mission of America's alleged top secret UFO retrieval program. We're going to get into that and more with our good friend Victor Viggiani, a retired school principal from Toronto, and also has been researching and analyzing anomalous aerial phenomenon for well over 30 years. And his experience involves UFO sightings, report investigation, counseling, individuals who report anomalous experiences, and of course is also the executive director of Zland Communications and Zland Communications News Network. Victor, welcome back once again.
Great to be with you, Richard. Always a pleasure and a privilege to share some on-air time with you and your listeners. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
And we should point out also, and we'll get into this, you are the president of membership for the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, ICER. We've talked to the vice president, Gary Hesseltine, on the program. Not too long after, I guess, its formation. So you're president of membership, and ICER recently interviewed this Pentagon whistleblower, David Grusch. So we'll touch on that as well. But just kind of, I don't know, maybe fill in some of the gaps in that little thumbnail sketch I gave of Grusch. What do you think is important for people to know when they're trying to gauge, his credibility in these sensational claims that he's making?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's really important for your listeners to understand that this fellow was in possession of one of the highest levels of clearance in the United States intelligence community. That's the first thing that we have to understand. Exactly what organization or what branch of the intelligence community he belonged to, I don't think it's ever been articulated, but he was definitely at a very high level intelligence officer within the intelligence community. And he was open to briefings, made briefings. He actually, one of the things that we did find out about David Grusch is he hand delivered briefs to the president or to the president's to the White House office. Let's put it that way. And so he had lots of information that the intelligence community did gather. And in addition to that, he spoke with many levels within the government military establishment that brought him into contact with people that told him directly. Now, he never saw any of this stuff, and he does very clearly state that in his deposition to the Intelligence Committee at the hearing, at the UAP hearing that he was a focal witness in. He never saw anything, but he had briefings with people who actually engaged in the collection of parts of UFOs or UAP, technology that came with these UAP, and what he calls biologics. In other words, bodies or beings that were in those craft. And when you listen to his interview, especially the interview that he was involved in at the UAP hearing, all of the members of the the panel, the hearing panel, um, his language is so specific in terms of describing things. He doesn't go into any kind of dramatic detail about things. But when they, I think it was one of the questions was, were there bodies in these craft? And he crossed his hands. He looked up and said, yes, there were biologics. So
Hmm.
that term itself, um, it has to be interpreted. There's no other way to interpret biologics. It means bodies, but the level that these individuals function at, their terminology is very specific, and it's germane to any kind of or endemic to any kind of professional career. Doctors use a certain kind of language. Pilots use certain language. Teachers do, and lawyers do, and that kind of language is sort of held within that community as a method of communication among the people within that community. But as soon as they step outside of that community, the intelligence community, and still use that language, sometimes people don't quite understand what these so-called experts are saying. If he was, let's say he was a lawyer, and he went in front of the panel and used lawyer ease to explain any questions that he would be asked. Um, my tendency would be to say, Mr. Grusch, could you please speak ordinary English? But I don't think it's within their lexicon to do that. They don't want to step things down to a point of becoming chatty with people in that kind of setting. So they stick to the language of the intelligence community, and they feel safe there.
And
And
that
that's
gives
exactly,
him a greater, that gives him, into your mind, an air of credibility because
yeah,
he's using the appropriate
that's right.
lexicon.
Yeah, exactly. It's that credibility makes people probe things more and more because they go further and further into the what do you mean by X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
So he continues to ferret down more specifically into the issues that are thrown his way, but he still uses that language. And to some degree, it's you could see the frustration in some of the people on the panel. But he did answer the questions. There was no doubt about it. He was very forthcoming, as were other people on the panel too, David Fravor, and I believe also too, I forget the other fellow's name. There was a third individual on it. He was Graves. Graves was there.
Yeah, Ryan Graves. Yeah, the
Ryan
fighter
Graves, right?
pilot. Yeah.
Yeah. So they all kind of spoke to the issues in their language too. However, I felt that Captain Fravor did use more of an informal lexicon when he spoke. He told it the way it was, what he saw. There was no doubt about it. So between the three of them, or among the three of them, they really told a full story about what this whole UAP issue was all about. But they did. They didn't even come close to knocking the socks off the panel like David Grusch did in terms of biologic and technologies that were found within these crafts. So he really did open the floodgates to all of it. And I've spoken to several people, one of them being Danny Sheehan, who has actually spoken with David Grusch at a different level, and also too with who else I've spoken to Paolo Gazzoldi, who was one of the people who interviewed him, and the credibility is just impeccable. There's literally no doubt that what he was involved in was in fact authentic. It was true. And the other factor that a lot of people really don't, I guess, understand completely is that he was testifying under oath, and
Mhm.
that in the military and the intelligence community, that means a lot. Now, there'd be no reason to perjure himself by exaggeration. Why would he? Because if he did do that, it would come out in the wash later on with people who did or did not give him that information. And if he prevaricated about that, Richard, I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about him now. So I think with that under oath kind of thing is a real kind of lock on his testimony.
Right. So let's just maybe back up a little bit and explain
Mhm.
maybe how this individual with these absolutely, I mean, the testimony is I was gobsmacked by it,
Mhm.
and so were most people, I'm guessing. But I mean, what a pivotal moment in history
Mhm.
for someone like that to testify before a subcommittee on national security in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting that uh, the individuals that really sort of I maybe brought him to the fore were the
Mhm.
same individuals, Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, interviewing
Right.
him, and that ended up in Micah Hanks' The Debrief.
Right.
Mike has been on the program many, many times,
Mhm.
a good friend.
Big story. Big story. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, here we are again. We talk about how pivotal that New York Times article was, December of 2017. Leslie Kean,
Mhm.
Ralph Blumenthal talking about ATIP. Here they are
Mhm.
again, interviewing um, David Grusch, and a month later, a month and a half later, he ends up testifying before this subcommittee on national security.
Mhm.
Can you kind of, I don't know, maybe connect the dots between that interview and how he ended up there
Well, you mean the first interview with
with Leslie and Ralph?
the
Did
debrief?
that lead? I'm guessing what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
asking is that interview responsible for him?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It was. I would put that interview in the same category of their December 17th. What year was it? 2017
Mhm.
story that was published in the New York Times. I would put them the ATIP program and Luis Elizondo, all of that stuff. It's a parallel type of situation with both of the men being Luis Elizondo and Grush, um, revealing things that had never been revealed before. I mean, the story that they broke first of all in 2017 with Ralph and Leslie's story that the Pentagon was actually given $22 million to conduct a program, and I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with that. Once they released that story that Harry Reid had somehow appropriated $22 million to get that program started from 2007 to I think it was 2012. A, bombshell one, okay. B, it was conducted in secret in the C ring in the Pentagon for that number of years. And then all of a sudden, Luis Elizondo finds out that people are trying to out him. They're trying to do something to his credibility while he was in that position, and he just decided to let go, just cut the strings from that. And what he did do in doing that, he brought back out of sequestration those videos, the Tic Tac videos, and they were the first indication that the Navy pilots had really seen, or the Air Force pilots had actually seen and witnessed all of this stuff in classic form, in gun camera and infrared, camera footage. And there's just nothing better than that. And then on top of that, David Fravor's one big testimony that he put forward was one of those Tic Tac videos hovering 50 feet above the ocean and the size of a small school bus, and then rising to 85,000 feet in less than 1 second. And the bombshell number two, I mean, they just kept on coming. And in a parallel way, I think Grush's testimony and his presence at that committee was probably in some ways, well, definitely just as powerful, but in some ways more powerful because we had a national intelligence officer under oath. Because nothing that I think I could be corrected on this, but I don't think Leslie and Ralph had anything that was given to them under oath that was just a
Right.
source, okay,
Right.
which is much different than testifying in front of a committee. So, I mean, it's just as important, but the idea of being under oath and testifying before a committee is
Sure.
totally different than a news story.
But it's
And
interesting because that interview that Leslie and Ralph did with David Grush, the New York Times this time they refused to run it,
that's right. Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
Washington Post were
Hmm.
they were humming and hawing, and I
Yeah.
guess by this time um, Leslie and Ralph felt that they had to get the story out, and apparently David was getting harassed online,
Mhm. Oh,
phone
yeah.
calls, and
Yeah.
so forth. So they went to Micah Hanks at the debrief, and here we are.
Yeah. It it's two very pivotal points in history, and you and I have spoken about the 2017 time frame in December of that year. That everything before that that time, I categorized it, in ufology and all of that as the Old Testament in ufology, and then all of a sudden 2017 happens, and that began the New Testament, and that biblical reference, it really kind of sticks with me because it just went from old folk basically old folklore into a totally new way of understanding what the UAP issue was all about because of what Luis Elizondo did, and all of the Tic Tac videos. And then we got another, you want to call it the New Testament? I don't know if you want to put that kind of brand on it, but in the biblical sense, I think it was just as powerful. And in some ways, because it was televised, it was in front of, millions of people. We had one of the ICER members actually went to Washington. One of my secretaries, in the portfolio that I have as president, he was actually there at the hearing. He didn't get into the room because you had to have special credentials to get in, and it was filled up by the line started at like 5 o'clock in the morning, so he couldn't get in. And if you notice that a lot of the people that were there were some high-profile journalists, including George Knapp. Anyways, it was such a powerful event in front of everybody, and it was sort of a bookmark to have the American public and indeed the world witness that kind of testimony. Yes, there were bodies. Yes, there were craft. Yes, there were technologies, and all under oath. It doesn't get any better than that.
No,
So
no.
it really doesn't when you think about it. And to have that kind of testimony rise to the level of credibility that it is, and as we move forward, we get into this. If you want, Chuck Schumer developing this sort of UAP Disclosure Act, it's sort of it's a complex layer cake upon which that particular hearing kind of, I guess, brought about, because Chuck Schumer's work would not be of any kind of relevance if David Grusch did not come forward.
I do want to come back to the UAP Transparency Act, but I just want to stick with David Grusch for a moment. And around the same time as the maybe a little bit later, after the debrief article in June of 2023, the New York Post ran the story. Well, everyone was running the story about Grusch claiming the Vatican helped the United States retrieve a UFO from Benito Mussolini. He didn't have it at that time anyway. He wasn't able to provide any hard evidence or documentation.
Right.
Give me the timing of ICER's interview with David regarding the Vatican and the UFO. When did the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research interview him?
It was probably. Let me just check here. I got the notice of it, and I published a press release on it on November the 14th, and it happened, I think, about a week earlier than that. Okay, that's the sort of time frame of 2023, and it's so difficult to talk about this aspect of what's going on. And as soon as the Vatican becomes mentioned in all of this, all the tangents just go out the window in just like a strange octopus form, because it goes back to what Daniel Sheen was trying to get at the citizen hearings in 2013, when he discovered that there was a way that he might be able to get into the Vatican, to get into their library files, which he was denied. Okay. And then it moves forward to other kinds of things that other priests have come forward and talked about, in terms of the aliens having souls, and all that kind of discourse about
all roads lead to the UFO, or all the roads lead to the Vatican.
Well, that's what it seems like, Richard. And I think when this thing called disclosure kind of pans out completely, if it ever does, I think the Vatican is going to play a pivotal role. And one of the things that I felt that was very serious in this whole endeavor that Paolo Guzzardi and Roberto Pignotti dealt with was that Pope Pius XII, who it was famous for a lot of other different reasons too that we don't necessarily have to talk about, but he not only was a pivotal person in either managing this thing within the Vatican, or dealing with it from behind closed doors with Mussolini. I don't really know. I don't have any. But the one key thing that he did do is he wrote to and facilitated with President Roosevelt at the time, to facilitate the transfer of this UAP crashed vehicle to the United States. Now, What reasoning would Pope Pius have for doing that? I don't know. Whether he just handed it off to someone else, I don't know. But the fact of the matter was, the Vatican was responsible for getting this UAP, an acorn-shaped kind of craft, somehow either intact or in pieces, or some sort of form of damage, back into the United States. Now, there was, as far as I know, there was no mention of any kind of biologics, as far as I know. But there was indeed a craft that was not of Earth origin, and the Pope was facilitated that through a letter to President Roosevelt at the time. And once again, it's another sort of tentacle that's, I guess you could call it another kind of bombshell that happened way back then. So these things they're like landmines, Richard. They just go off and at any given time, and some are in the present and some are in the past. And a lot of that kind of information is now coming forward. And we just wonder what else the Vatican knows. And in my discussions with Daniel Sheehan, and you and I have dealt with Danny, they've got, I remain convinced without any doubt, they probably have just as much information on this stuff than any government in the world collectively. Now, they may not have the actual craft and everything, but I know they do have testimony. They do have connections. The Servizio Intelligenza del Vaticano is a group of intelligence service agents that make the CIA look like Boy Scouts, because they've been in existence for hundreds, if not thousands of years in the Catholic Church. And the amount of information, given the fact that the UFO phenomenon has been in existence for so long, you've got to assume that this would definitely be in the radar of the SIV, the Servizio Intelligenza del Vaticano. It would have to be. I would bet any amount of money on it. And how we get to those files and how we get little dribs and drabs out of it. And maybe this particular interview that Roberto and Paolo did, maybe that's part of the Vatican possibly giving some sort of leeway to the information that they do have. And by the way, Danny Sheehan, when he was interviewed with on the West Coast, he had a conference call with Danny and Paradigm Institute, Steve Bassett, and the question came up about I wrote in a question to them. I said, Danny, could you please answer the question about the Vatican? And he went on for about 15 minutes about he was re-energizing and renewing his investigation and his questions to a different group of people within the Curia about the UFO issue. And when Danny says something like that, you can bet that Danny is not going to let that one go. He's going to continue to work on that and try to find out a way with his Jesuit connections to get some information about all of this. So that's sort of like a more news at 11, I think, with Danny Sheehan.
All right, we'll take a quick time out. Back to more of my conversation with Victor Viggiani, Zland News Network. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. All right, Victor Viggiani, Zland News Network, Zland Communications is with us. And among other things, we're talking about David Grusch Pentagon whistleblower and his claims that the Vatican helped the United States retrieve a UFO from Benito Mussolini. Now, this made news headlines back in June of this year, but it's kind of gained some new currency because um, the Victor, or the organization that Victor is involved with, the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, or ICER, he's president of membership. And earlier this month, earlier in November, um, representatives from ICER interviewed David Grusch. So the actual retrieval, from what I understand, took place in about 1933.
33, yeah.
And it was then, I mean, it wasn't moved to a secure airbase in Italy until around 44 or 45.
45, yeah,
Why did it
almost 10,
take so long?
more than 10 years, yeah, more than 10 years later. I think what happened there, from my understanding, is that the way the craft was located, the way it was found, it at that time, I guess we're looking at a different context and a different era of understanding what these things might have been. The technology at the time, in the early stages of pre-World War II, was not anything like it was today. It back then, the idea that there might have been something of an extraterrestrial nature, of anything among the general public now, okay, was so far removed from their context, from their own reality, from their understanding. It wasn't something that people talked about back then. This is one of the things that Paulo described to me, because people were basically illiterate about this kind of stuff. So that craft could have been anything. It could have been some sort of weird thing that fell from the sky. They didn't really have an understanding that, oh my goodness, there's a possibility that the government is hiding this because of their and all the things that we go through now, and in trying to understand what fell from the sky, in Roswell, in 1947, that kind of thing. It was a totally different context as to what happened. So that means, I'm going to be assuming that the level of security that surrounded this thing was not nearly as tight as it should have been or could have been. And whoever did retrieve it did whatever with it and said, well, we don't know what it is. And other people made decisions about how that thing was going to be treated. And I think the Pope, when Pius stepped in, I think that's the point at which, once they informed the United States government that they had something, I think it sort of perked the interest of the national security establishment back then in 1933. And within that time period that you mentioned, they know we'd better get on this, because if it was 1944 or 45, when this thing was actually kind of maneuvered around, or at least hidden, the United States had gone through several events of a similar nature prior to Roswell. In 1942, there was a crash in Missouri, at which I guess not a priest, but some sort of minister was called to administer to a being that was at death's door at this crash in Missouri. And there's a long story about that he could almost spend a whole program on. So the United States had at that time a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. Just as bizarre, but their level of national security surrounding it was totally different than what Italy's was at that time. So it was approached in a totally different manner.
So it's moved to a secure location on an Italian Air Force base somewhere between 44 and 45.
Right.
Mussolini is executed. What did the New York Times call that? A fitting end to a wretched life.
Yes.
April 1945. So when is Pius XII working the back channels to get that UFO to the United States? Does that happen after Mussolini's death, or?
Yeah, apparently it did. Apparently it did. Once that sort of threat was out of the way, I think the Vatican felt that it was more possible for them to communicate with the national security people in the United States, namely the president. So that kind of a communication after the war was a lot easier than during the war.
Sure.
Because if the Pope had done that something 2 or 3 years earlier, maybe it would have been a different result, and maybe the military at the time would have clamped down on things. But because of the passing of Mussolini and the end of the war, I think it opened the door for some level of communication, because at the time Italy had no level of acuity or expertise or technological advantage at the time to examine this kind of stuff. And so I think that once the Pope made the overture to the president at the time, Roosevelt, I think they were taken seriously. And okay, boys, we'll take it over. We'll take it off your hands right now, because if they let it stay there, it would not receive any kind of investigation or treatment or examination anywhere close to what the United States did. But it also brought that thing over to the United States, but allowed the United States to clamp down on any information coming out about it, which is another kind of pillar of ideology or pillar of secrecy, that if the Vatican had tried to do something, or the military at the time, they'd have botched it up for sure. It would have been a mess. But now that it was over in the United States, the United States could cloak this thing in all the secrecy that they became famous for, beginning in 1942, and then at 1947 in Roswell, and following that. So it was a real way that Italy could just wipe its hands of all and give it to the United States, let them cover it up, because the Vatican didn't want to do it at the time, anyways.
Right. Did ICER get from Grusch any details about, I don't know, chain of custody from the time it leaves the Italian Air Force Base to when it arrives? How, what vessel it's on, or anything like that?
He may know about that, but they did not get into that in the interview. No. That would be really interesting to find out. But to my knowledge, there was no information about that.
Now, it would have been, well, Truman, Roosevelt was dead by 45, so it would have been Truman, assuming that the president was made aware of this.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen or read anything that really ties Roosevelt to, knowledge of UFOs, or am I wrong?
Well, no, I think you're right. Because it may have come up in cabinet meetings, because at the time, Foo Fighters were, chasing planes and all of that. But I don't think it was the time. The timing wasn't right for that administration to become involved in funny lights in the sky at the time.
Right.
So that just wasn't something that the Roosevelt was even, from my understanding, at all interested in.
No, I mean, there aren't rumors of secret meetings with aliens, like we have with, Eisenhower and so forth. So
right. And Truman admitting, a bald-faced admission on camera that, we talk about these things all the time in cabinet meetings. I mean, he's on the record as actually saying that. There is a clear video that, yes, and it's sort of like nonplussed. Yes, we do talk about that all the time. But it was never taken seriously, and it was all dampened down. And it's just some sort of form of folklore, or an old man talking out of his hat. Who knows? But the United States has ways of tamping down that kind of blockbuster information, especially during a time of war. When you're talking atomic bomb and all that other kind of information.
So you mentioned, we're going to take another time out. We'll come back.
Sure.
And you mentioned that David Grusch's testimony before the subcommittee on national security maybe gave rise to, or provided the impetus for the UAP Transparency Act. That's Chuck Schumer's bill, correct?
Chuck Schumer's,
yeah. Let's talk about that when we come back.
Sure, for sure.
Viggiani, Victor Viggiani, Zland News Network, stays with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Victor Viggiani, Zland Communications, Zland News Network, and how do people subscribe and get the press releases?
Well, all you have to do is get out your Google bar and Google Zland Communications .blogspot.com, and there I have listed well over 200 press releases, editorials, commentaries, mostly editorials. It's a journalistic kind of approach to informing and educating people. So the latest one is in fact part of what we're going to talk about. It's about a special report that Zland Communications issued on just a couple of days ago, yesterday, November 27th, about Danny Sheehan's press release regarding this whole act and what's happening to suppress this act. And I would really encourage listeners to go to the Blogspot now, if you're listening, if you've got a computer in front of you, and give it a shot and have a look at it, because it's probably one of the most comprehensive and complicated press releases, or actually it's a report about this whole situation. I've got there an explanation of what Danny said in his press release. I've also got a commentary from ZNN by myself. And I also have a readable version of the UAP Disclosure Act that our good friend Steve Bassett went through the actual PDF file and highlighted in red. The whole thing is still there, but he highlighted everything in red, the salient points about it. And it's so much easier to read when you've got the actual salient points right in front of you, rather than trying to ferret through all 64 pages of it. And then after that, there's a video that people might want to watch. But it is just a wonderful way to, first of all, understand the act itself, and second of all, to understand why Chuck Schumer did this, and Mike Rounds, his cohort, when they developed this thing, because the response so far has been, up until I think the middle of last week, when the doubts began to rise as to whether or not this thing was actually going to be passed, or at least changed substantially. And everybody has been sort of biting their nails about what is going to be happening to this, and not only what's going to be happening to it, but the why of what's going to be happening to this act, according to the Republicans. And there's some really fantastic stories about why some of these Republicans, Richard, voted in favor of putting this thing right in the act right away. Slam that MDA right into the whole National Disclosure Act and the whole budgetary allotments. Put it all in and do it. And then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 of these Republican senators and congressmen shut down and are not. They've publicly said that they're not going to be voting against it and not be voting for it.
We should maybe explain, sort of define some terms. So
yeah,
it's interesting that these attempts to further disclosure or shed further light on the whole UAP issue often come as amendments to the National Defense Authorization.
Right. Sure.
So too is the UAP Transparency Act. So just give us
in a nutshell.
Point. Okay. Yeah. What is it?
Yeah. Well, the National Disclosure Act itself, the National Disclosure, is a budgetary. It's a huge document, and what that does is it's passed each year, and it's passed. It's probably it's a huge document, just massive. But I think it was 20 or 21 when Mark Rubio and Mark Warner put their act together for the year. And what the act does is it defines all the budgetary elements as to what the Senate will be giving all of the military intelligence community. All the money just flows right from that act. Millions and millions of dollars go into, and if you read it, you see where all the money goes, to the Navy, to the Air Force, all of these things. And it's a very powerful act. It's done every single year, and everybody looks forward to, my goodness, how much money are we going to receive? What will our allotment be? And from the CIA right up to whoever.
You said millions. I think you mean billions, don't you?
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. Billions of dollars is exactly right, Richard. So that in itself, it's done every year. It's been done every single year. But the year that Rubio and Warner did it, they somehow tacked into the very end of it language about UAP. which had never been done before. And it was in that act, and it was not an amendment, it was right in the act itself. And so it was a section defining the kinds of things that they wanted to find out about budgetary allotments to certain agencies that could be created in order to investigate the UAP phenomenon. That's it in a nutshell. And it was stuck right at the very end. And if you want to read that, it's on one of my press releases. And I think I articulated it pretty clearly as to what the language was and why Mark Warner and Rubio put that in there. I don't think we'll ever know. I think it happened because they had a briefing from several people in the Navy. That's the scuttlebutt.
Okay.
Several senators were briefed by the Navy, who, by the way, probably is one of the agencies, the military agencies in the U.S. military that knows more about the UFO issue than anybody. Okay, even the intelligence community. This goes back to Roscoe Hillenkotter in 1967, publishing in the New York Times and stating very, very clearly that behind the scenes, the UFO issue has been taken very seriously, and he recommended at the time hearings to get to the bottom of it back in 1967. And it just went from there. And he was the first director of the CIA, by the way. So this got a huge, long history. So that's what Rubio and Warner did. And then years after that, it became restated again. Money was allocated, and all these agencies, ATIP and Arrow, and all these other programs were put in place. And then all of a sudden comes this whole thing with Grusch, and then all the information about that. And Chuck Schumer, and I've asked this question of many, many people, and I don't know how the heck Chuck Schumer has taken a bite out of this apple. I don't know why. We're just not. I think it's because of Harry Reid. I think that he's following the footsteps of Harry Reid, and apparently he and Chuck Schumer were very, very close. So Chuck Schumer, what he did, along with Mike Rounds, another senator, they wrote the UAP Disclosure Act, and that act is now getting ready to be inserted into this National Disclosure
National Defense Authorization Act.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I never get these damn
Too
letters
many
right.
of them. Way too many.
Oh,
In
maybe
this
way too
field.
many. Yeah, I think I know my own VV, but that's about it. In any case, they have attempted to inject this as part of this new act into the larger one. And what's happened is there's developed a huge amount of resistance. Initially, it was a great idea. He spoke about it on the Senate floor very clearly, and everybody was sort of applauding it. It's a fantastic thing to happen. We're looking forward to it. Both sides of the floor, they were the committee, the National Intelligence Committee that assisted them in developing this whole thing, this whole amendment. They were all in favor of it. I think there were 17 people who voted positively in favor of it on the committee to be inserted into the National Authorization Act. All of that, it was ready to go. And then my understanding, through what I've learned from Daniel Sheehan in his press release, is that some contractors, Boeing and several other of these major contractors who've contributed heavily to the coffers of Mitch McConnell, who else we got here?
Mike Rogers, Republican
Mike
from Illinois.
Rogers. Yeah, Mike Rogers, several of them. Turner, Rogers, McConnell, $130,000 to Representative Johnson's campaign that he's the new speaker. And all of these corporations, are putting money into their coffers, and they are big time corporations who have purportedly, and here's the kicker to it, these are the corporations to whom previous governments, previous military, and the Pentagon have given technology to keep it out of the government sphere of influence. Because if it stayed in the sphere of government influence, information, Freedom of Information Acts and all that could get to the information. But they gave this stuff to corporations, to Boeing, to Lockheed, and once they gave it to them, Lockheed doesn't have to release anything. Boeing doesn't have to release anything. So that's in there. The technologies are all there. Now, whether there's bodies, whether that we don't know for sure, but definitely the technologies.
What would Schumer Rounds UAP Act do?
Okay, what would it do? It's kind of clear that, first of all, It would set timelines for all military, government, and intelligence agencies within the United States government. It would force all of those agencies to divest themselves of all information that they have about UAP. That's the one thing. By law, they would be required to submit that data with, I think it's 365 days from the passing of the act. And that was a requirement of it. Okay. And that's the major component of it. There's much more to it than that. But it also describes a 9-member panel that would be developed to oversee this data. Okay, all the data, once it's collected, a 9-member panel would review all the information. And that panel, interestingly enough, would be under the jurisdiction and direction of the President of the United States, whoever that would be at the time when this thing is passed. So it's a huge step. This has never been done before. So those are the two major components. And as I said earlier, if people want to read the whole thing, go to my website and you can, and it's easy. And it really, you know what it really does, Richard? It's nice and easy language. I've never really read anything, legislation like that anyways, that's so easy to read. It's straightforward. It's just bang, 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 point, point, point. And it's just, here's what you got to do, corporations. Here's what you got to do, United States Air Force. Here's what you got to do, United States Navy, and give it to us by a certain time frame. Game over.
It sounds almost as if it was modeled on the Assassinations Records Review Board that came out after all the pressure after the Oliver Stone movie JFK. Right. That little blurb at the end of the film, call your congressman. We want.
That's right.
They created that board. Mm-hmm. They developed timelines.
That's right. Yep.
Unfortunately, they weren't adhered to. So,
yeah. Well, you're right in saying that that was the model. That was the exact model that the Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds based all of their amendment on, which I think is a great thing to do because it sets a precedence. And see, my big concern is that why have these Republicans, done an about face on supporting this whole thing? And here's my take on it, for what it's worth. And notice, Richard, you know what? We're not talking about UFOs anymore. We're not talking about lights in the sky anymore. You and I have talked about this for years and years and years. This has become so tacky and political that it's almost becoming distasteful as to what's happening in the United States government. So there's two things that I want to mention on it, and you can redirect me if you want. But if Chuck Schumer knew exactly what he was doing, which I think he did, he put this thing in place for a couple of reasons. The number one reason was to attain some sort of UAP transparency, some sort of mechanism where the United States government could gain some sort of control over the military and intelligence agencies to legislate or demand or require them to give all the information up. Okay, that's I think the main reason for it. But I think one of the other subsidiary reasons is that there's an election coming up. Okay, and there's in 2024, and if this thing gets passed and it gets signed by the president, let's say it just becomes done. The legislation becomes done. This legislation will go onto the desk of the president of the United States. He will sign it, and then all of that stuff that you and I just talked about, the review board, the demands and requirements, the timelines, and everything we talked about earlier, all of that stuff would be put into play and progress all the way through 2024. And I think anybody would be foolish to not assume that President Biden would use this as one of the issues in his reelection campaign, because it would become public knowledge, okay, that he's in charge of this 9-member review board, and that all this information was coming forward, and the fruition of the Grusch interview, the fruition of the Pentagon C-ring investigation, under Harry Reid, all of that stuff, information would come forward during an election year. And I think that piece of the information, Chuck Schumer knew what he was doing. He really knew exactly how to manage this thing to allow the floodgates to open in such a way that the president would have control over this as no other president has had before. Those are my two ways of interpreting what Schumer did and why he might have done it. Of course, speculation on my part, but I think it's a good bet that it played into the whole idea that there would be an election coming up in 2024.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens to the UAP
Mm, that's right.
Disclosure Act. Just a quick word about ICER
Hmm.
and their attempts to what gain a foothold inside the United Nations. What is that all about, and how
Okay.
does the
Yeah.
tiny nation of San Marino enter into all of this?
Well, first of all, a word about ICER, the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. It's a group of individuals, and there are I think 27 or 28 countries represented. We have representatives from 27 and possibly 28 because we're on our way to getting one from France or another one from France. Um, so we have representatives from 27 different countries on who are members of ICER. And in addition to that, each one of those 27 members, almost all of them, have deputies, deputy representatives. So there are about 45 or 47 actual members of ICER from 27 different countries. And in order for ICER to have some sort of leverage to get into negotiations or discussions with the United Nations, a couple of things have to be done. Number one, there must be some sort of international representation within the organization or the body within ICER. And we have that. We've got the 27 countries represented. And the other thing that has to happen is that we need a sponsor. We need a United Nation, a member of a country who's a member of the United Nations to sponsor ICER's initiative or to pave the way through to the UN to begin negotiating with the United Nations about the UAP issue. And that's what San Marino is. San Marino is a member of the United Nations. It's a small country, but a very powerful one. And the discussions that the president, Roberto Vignotti, and Gary Hasseltine, the VP, have been very fruitful with the previous government. And they were pretty much on board with moving this whole thing very, very quickly forward. But an election happened and a new government has taken over, who we have to not renegotiate, but we have to re-engage them at the same level to order for this thing to go through. So now a new government is in place, and it's not like we're starting from square one again. It's just that we have to get the imprimatur from the new government to move forward to have ICER sit at the table at whatever level the UN will accept us at. Basically, what ICER wants to do is establish an office for UFO UAP investigations within the United Nations. That's the overall goal of what we're trying to do. And that is so unique in so many different ways because no other organization has stepped foot in the United Nations as ICER has, with the amount of representation from each country. And that's another bonus that we have. So that's where we're headed. We're hoping that Roberto and Gary can really, put brass tacks down and begin negotiations again with the new government to reestablish the communication levels that we have to have. And everyone understands the delicate nature of that kind of communication. And it's not like we're advancing our cause to a government or to the United Nations where they're saying, what, UFOs? We've already established that.
Hmm.
That's the floor level that we've already established, and that's one of the big bonuses that we've already established with that dialogue being already be put in place. So we don't have to re-explain things to the officials within San Marino. We've already laid the groundwork for that. So we're very enthusiastic about it. But yeah, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take some time, and in conjunction with what's happening in the United States, it could be a strong impetus towards more global, more international flavor to disclosure, rather than it just being the focus being just on the United States. And that's another issue that I have a problem with, because many people globally feel that this issue, the UFO matter, is a United States issue, which is not. I mean, this stuff is happening all over the world. And that's what ICER is all about. We want to make this a global issue where we create a global dialogue, a global narrative about this, so that we can get our representatives to work into schools of journalism, to work into universities, to work into libraries, to work into community events, so that within each country we can establish some sort of framework where there's a place to go in each country to find out about what the UFO issue is all about. So it's a brave initiative, and we have regular meetings, and we're very, very enthusiastic about where we're going with this.
All right. Can you leave us with an ICER website?
Oh, sure. It's I believe it's ICER.network.
ICER, ICER
.network.
network.
ICER, yeah, network, yeah. And it's got all of the we've got press releases on it. We're one of our key members, Francesco Correa. He's in the midst of redesigning the whole website. It's still there, but we've got a good idea as to how we want to refurbish the. Do you know Robert Fleischer?
I do not.
Okay, he's one of our key media members from Germany, and he is one of the kingpins in helping us to refresh our website. So Robert would be a good fellow to have on at some point. He's very informative, extremely knowledgeable about the UFO issue, and maybe I'll put you in contact with him. He's a great interview.
I'd love to have him on.
He's a great guy too.
Thank you for that. I'll look for that
So
email.
that's where ICER's at, and once again, you can follow it on my website. There's ways to get into it. I talk about. I think I've written an editorial on it when we were first established. I wrote the first press release for it. Hello.
Yeah.
I had to. I just love doing that kind of stuff. So it was really, really a pleasure and an honor for me to do that and to be part of it. Actually, Don Schmidt was one who, once this ICER framework developed and they were looking for names, Don called me a little while after they had established the executive committee, and he asked me if I wanted to become Canada's representative on the board. So I said, oh, sure, I'll do it. But one of my problems is I'm having a lot of difficulty selecting a deputy.
Oh,
yeah.
Who are you going to deputize?
Well, that's the question. You need someone who can really commit to being mindful of the timing of the interviews and the meetings that are going to be. And there are a lot of people in Canada who are involved in all of this, but I'm just not quite sure that I have a few in the back of my mind, but I'm just not sure of the level of commitment that they might have towards something like this, because it's very similar to some of the lone wolves that are doing things all over the planet. They're doing things for their own reasons, and there's no collaborative nature to what they're doing. And I'm not denigrating their efforts, because there's been fantastic work done on it. But I tried to put people together back when I was doing Strange Days Indeed on CFRB with Errol Bruce Knapp. I tried my darndest to get a coalition within Canada of like-minded people to develop the disclosure dialogues, and let's come together and put our resources. But a certain individual whose name I will not mention kiboshed that whole thing, and ever since then it's been so difficult to get some sort of consensus as to what kind of deputization I could acquire to have someone who's trustworthy. And the individual who spoiled things for me gets all the media attention, and nothing happens after that. So I'll leave it at that. But this is very, very difficult to do, and you have to have someone who you can count on. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pull any punches at all here, but you have to have somebody who's totally dedicated and who doesn't sit around at the meetings and do nothing or say nothing, and just is just ineffective in the role. I want someone who's going to be totally committed.
Some say I should be committed. That's another story.
You want to be the deputy?
I wasn't going there. The disclosure movement, it's 2024 is going to be very interesting. There's so many So many things happening with ICER and the UAP Transparency Act, and I'm sure we'll hear from David Grusch again before too long. So it's shaping up to be a very interesting 2024, and I look forward to our next discussion, Victor.
Sure. We'll keep you as up to date as we possibly can, and I'll be diligently working on things to make sure that everybody gets the right information, and or at least provide them with the breadcrumbs to follow it to the end of the line on this. So
zlandcommunications.blogspot.com.
that's right.
zlandcommunications.blogspot.com. I've linked up to it in the episode notes. Victor, thank you again.
Thank you very much, my friend, and we'll talk soon, and best to you and your family.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hey there, Merry Christmas, and welcome to this very special Christmas edition of Strange Planet. And if you'd like to get deeper into Strange Planet, you know what to do. Click on that link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. There are 3 premium subscriptions to choose from. Choose the one that's right for you. But essentially, you get access to commercial-free listening. I love my sponsors, but occasionally it's kind of nice to listen without the commercial interruptions. I also produce bonus episodes exclusively for premium subscribers, so you get access to bonus episodes and, of course, a subscription to my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. Well, I don't know about what goes on at your house at Christmas and traditions that you have, but we love to tell stories. We usually have the fireplace roaring, and sometimes we tell ghost stories, but more often we just sort of reminisce about Christmases past. I guess that's kind of the ultimate ghost story, isn't it? The ghost of Christmas past. And we're going to tell some stories tonight with, I think, one of the consummate storytellers. Jim Harold is among America's most popular paranormal podcast hosts. He's got a number of free programs, the Paranormal Podcast, and of course, Jim Harold's Campfire, which is, it's a holiday favorite, but it's a favorite all year round. He's developed a loyal following over the last nearly 20 years, I think, spanning the globe. And he's also written a number of books. His True Ghost Stories series. He's got the True Ghost Story adult coloring book. I think he's up to volume 5, maybe working on volume 6.
Working on 6.
Working on 6 of True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire. And there he is, Jim. Hey, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Merry Christmas, Richard, to
Merry
you
Christmas.
And your audience. And just good to be here to talk about Christmas ghost stories, and just one of my favorite times of the year, because I think it is one of the, maybe this and Halloween are the 2 times of year that we older folks, as they say, we grown-ups, I think we kind of slough some of that off and we bring back our childhood and a sense of wonder. And there is really something magical about this season. I don't think there's any question about it.
For sure, for sure. What happens on, what do you do on Campfire at Christmas?
Well, every year, what we try to do, this year was actually special. We had the great Jeff Belanger on, who's written a story, a book, a great book, The Fright Before Christmas, about Krampus. And then what we do is we add in some new Christmas campfire stories, and we revisit some classics. Our callers come in and share their encounters with Santa Claus and all of those different things. And it's just a great time to reflect. And again, as I said, and as you mentioned, you think about your family and the quote ghosts of Christmas past, and it's just a great time. It's perfect for storytelling.
I saw the thumbnail for your podcast on Krampus on social Instagram. I think I saw it there. Who does your artwork for those thumbnails? It's absolutely fabulous.
I gotta tell you, that's our friend AI. I've been using AI for the better part of this year, and it's not usually the first time it comes up. But for this, I put in a prompt, have Krampus sitting by a campfire, and I had to do it a couple of times, but usually it comes up with something. And this is probably another topic, but I'm very interested in AI, and I have mixed feelings about it. I think on one hand, it's going to be fantastic. And on the other hand, maybe not so fantastic, but it's been great for my artwork. So yeah, people are saying, "Who's your artist?" And I said, "I'm sorry, it's AI." But it's kind of fun to play around with and get those different figures. And I try to make it very evocative. We just had one where someone was chased by a ghost truck. And
I saw that too. Yes.
Yeah, I got a great graphic of this, semi right on top of these people in this little small car, and it just captured the spirit of the story perfectly. So, but it takes some back and forth, but it's kind of a fun little thing to do.
It is. My son North does my he packages the Rumble channel videos and the YouTube videos, and he uses AI for the thumbnails as well. But the skill is, yes, it's also in the prompts. If you just say, I'm doing a show about dinosaurs, and slap in whatever you get. But if you've got to refine it, and as you say, the proper prompt. So it's all about how you instruct the AI. There's a skill to that.
Yeah, I think it is, and sometimes it's maddening, and sometimes like this doesn't work, and you kind of change your direction. But it is really interesting, and I think that that AI will be very important to us. But I think in the long run, humanity, I still have faith that humanity will win out, and that hopefully AI will just be a tool. Just like we use the internet as a tool, we use computers as a tool, and hopefully AI will be a tool and not be the one who's telling stories in the future, that it'll still be us, Richard, that will still be telling the stories.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's hope that we use it as a tool and not the other way around.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to Campfire. And you have, I understand, an all-time Christmas campfire story that, when did this come to you?
This had to be back in 2010 or something. And it's really neat because in years past, this year we're doing a holiday Christmas card contest. In previous years, we did an ornament, and I had somebody send me a beautiful ornament based on this story because I thought it was just such a striking story. And it's a simple story, but it's just very evocative. This was probably back in 2010. Adam from Connecticut called up. And he said that his family was scattered all across the East Coast. But this particular holiday season, they all decided that they would get together, and they rented a big house in Vermont to celebrate Christmas all together over a 5-day period. The whole family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all came together. And I mean, how neat is that? So they heard stories of it being haunted by the people who worked for the house and things. Now, all of the bedrooms were taken by relatives with kids. So Adam and his brother, they said, we'll sleep on the couches out in the living room. And it was 2:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve, Richard. Adam and his brother, they were sleeping in the main area of the house, and Adam woke up, and then all of a sudden he saw a tall figure at the top of a large staircase, and it wasn't Santa Claus. And at first he thought, well, maybe somebody from the family is getting up to use the restroom. This figure was perfectly still. And then he realized it wasn't fully featured. It was almost like a silhouette. Uh, he got the sense, though, it was dressed in a tuxedo.
Hmm.
And then this figure starts walking slowly down the stairs, which would freak me out. It's like, what is this thing? And the thing is that, and I've heard this from other people, and I'm sure you've heard many stories of the supernatural, that it was not moving in a smooth motion, but it was kind of moving like in a herky-jerky movement, like a puppet on a string, like a marionette. Now, Adam rubbed his eyes. He thought he was dreaming, but he wasn't. And this figure walks to the bottom of the stairs, and he kind of expansively looks around. Like Adam said, it was almost like he was like, "Oh, I'm home at last, and it's great to be back." And then he said in this weird echoey voice, and that's the one thing Adam said, the voice reverberated in the house. It didn't sound like you or I. And the figure said to no one in particular, "Oh my, love, what a mirror image we are. Oh my love, what a mirror image we are." And then simply disappeared.
What does that mean?
I don't know. That's been the question, Richard, I've been asking for the last 13 years. Oh my love, what a mirror image we are. I don't know what that means. I've speculated maybe it was his commentary on if it was some kind of ghost or something from a previous time. Maybe it was his commentary on the universe and the fact that we're a mirror image. I'd almost speculated maybe it was a time slip, and I'm picturing a grand old house, probably at one point it had been wealthy people, and you could picture someone coming back home in a tuxedo, like a dandy type person. And maybe he's commenting on the mirror image of time. Adam asked around the morning, and no one had any idea what he's talking about. His uncle had said that a head poked into his room that he didn't recognize, but he figured it was just a family member. But that was it. And then they went on eating their breakfast like nothing ever happened. But Adam, and I think he contacted me not terribly long ago, a few years back, and said this still puzzles him, what it meant. And that ornament, I wish I would have brought it with me, kind of in gold writing, and the person put like a figure of a person with a tuxedo on looking at a mirror image of themselves. And it's just an odd thing because it doesn't really mean anything, or maybe it means everything. I don't really know, but it's always kind of been one of those, what I call head scratchers, one that I pondered over the years. What does it really mean?
Yeah. And not particularly scary. It's not ominous. It's a fairly, innocuous encounter where they're just saying something that's kind of perplexing, kind of cool. I mean, this person is dressed in kind of a period costume.
Right.
It would be, don't get me wrong, it would be startling to say the least, and confusing and so forth. But I don't know. It sounds like kind of a friendly fellow.
Well, the thing is that I got to say this, Richard. Of course, we always tell people about the spooky, scary stories on the Campfire because people love those. And we usually have, on a typical episode of Campfire every week, we have 8 to 10 stories. And there will be a significant amount that will fall into that. Oh, terrifying. I was visited by a demon, those kind of things.
Yeah. Krampus.
But then, exactly. But the point is that my favorites are what I call head scratchers. They're things that don't quite add up. They literally have you scratching your head because you go, what in the world was that? And I think those are very true to life. I think many of us have had those. Mm-hmm. And those really are my favorite, just the ones that get you going, oh my gosh, what did that mean?
Yeah. They almost seem more real to me. In this case, particularly because the caller to the program it's not like he was trying to, it didn't sound like he was making up a story. Like,
no.
If you were making up a story about a visitor coming down the stairs, he would probably make him a little more menacing.
Yes.
He might say, "What are you doing in my house?" or something like that.
Instead,
exactly. He says something that is very, I don't know, like he's speaking in code or something. I mean, it doesn't make any
Right.
sense. You don't make
Right.
that kind of stuff up. It's
And
very
I do,
cryptic.
it's funny because I got to say this, people will say, I mean, you've been doing these shows much longer than I have, but I've been doing them about a little over 18 years now. And the thing is people say, have you figured it all out? Do you know what all this means? And honestly, what I say is I have one thing I'm convinced of, and that is there's so many layers to our world we don't understand, so many things that we don't see, that the world is far stranger because, I'm looking at my desk and I have a, wood top here, and that's wood and that's solid and I can touch it, and that's the way the universe is. But I don't know that it is that way. I think it's far stranger and there's far more depth to it. And we just take for granted that reality is as we perceive it on face value. But I think it's much, much deeper and much, much weirder in some cases. Maybe we are a mirror image, Richard, and he was speaking a universal truth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's far more complicated. We tend to simplify it and speak in kind of, I don't know, archetypes, or we say ghosts, or we say UFOs. But in the end, I think it is far more complicated than just, beings from another planet flying a spaceship to planet Earth, or someone who comes back from the grave. Our whole notion of what is life after death, I think, is an oversimplification of what's really going on. And I don't think our puny little minds, our mortal brains, are equipped to really even adequately describe what it really is.
Yeah, I would agree. I do believe that. I believe there's much more going on. But I think the supernatural is real. I have no doubt about it whatsoever, and I'm convinced of that. But ask me exactly what's going on, and I'll say, your guess is as good as mine.
All right, so let's get back to Christmas. And one of the things about Christmas is it's all about family, of course, but there are a lot of people that don't have family, and Christmas is an incredibly sad time of year because the fact that they don't have anyone in their lives, it's reinforced during family holidays. And I know you have a very poignant story about that.
Yeah, this was Jerry from Chicago. This is just from a couple of years ago, and I love this story. Jerry said she was never much of a Christmas person. And this particular year, sounds like she was maybe, didn't have any real close family around. She had gotten over a bad breakup, and it was right around December 23rd, right around that time of year. And she was feeling really down. And she lived in Chicago. She lived on the second floor, I think, of a house, and it was really very, very, very hard to find. She said even when people were looking for her, they couldn't find the place half the time. She said she was feeling more grinchy than usual, at odds with family, and she was sad and lonely. She had no holiday spirit whatsoever, and it was a very cold Chicago winter. And she was standing in her kitchen thinking of doom and gloom, and suddenly she heard a scratching at her back door. And she thought, oh, this is kind of a dicey neighborhood. Who's here? And she went and she looked, and there was a beautiful dog sitting there looking at her. And she asked the dog, what are you doing here? And the dog nudged the screen door open with its nose, and it just walked in her place. And she said, usually if you would see a dog in that neighborhood, it was a stray. And, you can tell a stray when you see one, not well kept, anything like that. This was a beautiful dog with a red collar, no tags, absolutely perfect. And again, she said, her apartment, external wooden stairs, very strange that the dog would have walked all the way up there. And she said that this was just a beautiful dog. It was like dealing with Lassie. She let the dog stay, and she said, I'm going to care for the dog until I can find the owner in the morning. The dog slept with her in her bed. And Jerry said, somebody had said, Jerry, what could you use tonight to make you feel better during this holiday season? This is exactly what she would have asked for, a dog. So in the morning, she was going to take the dog to the Humane Society. But before she did, she let the dog out to go to the bathroom, as one does. And the dog ran off, and she never saw her again. Never saw her in the neighborhood, nothing. But for some reason, that dog being with her that night, Jerry said, totally gave her attitude a 180, made her turn around totally. And she went on from there and came from a good place, and her life improved. And she believes that that dog was not just a dog, but it was basically an angel. And she hopes that that dog finds the next person who needs a Christmas angel too.
I believe they are angels. We don't deserve dogs.
Yeah, true. And I do think that kind of thing is possible. I mean, could you say that it's possible maybe God sent that dog in the form of a dog? Maybe the dog didn't even really exist. You know, maybe it was a creation of God because who knows? I mean, she didn't say she was looking at self-harm or anything like that, but who knows? I believe at times that help is sent our way. We had a great story, if I can digress for a moment. We had a great story on the Campfire about this young woman who was going to college. I think I've told it on the show. She was going to college. She was driving about an hour away from home. And this is before cell phones. This is the 80s. She's driving, 8 o'clock at night, and it's in New England. It's cold. It's snowy. Her car gives out on the freeway. She can't just sit there. She doesn't want to freeze to death. She's like, and she sees down below there's a parallel road and there's a gas station or a service station. And she thought, aha, that's my salvation. She's not really in very winter-like clothes, not heavy boots or anything. And she trudges down the hill and gets to that place. And she opens up the door, and the guy's at the counter, and it's 7:55, I think it was. And she says, well, here's a situation. I need some help. And he looks at the clock and he said, well, I'm getting ready to leave, but maybe the owner who lives next door can help you. And then all of a sudden the owner almost appears. Didn't see him come in. He just kind of appears. And anyway, he goes up, he looks at the car. He said, yeah, I can't fix it tonight, but I can give you a tow. Where would you like to tow the car? And she gave him the name of the garage, which was like 20 or 30 minutes away. And he said, come on. And he tows the car to the garage and then offers her a ride to home, really going out of his way. And she asks what he wants, and he says, $20, which, for all the bother he's going through wasn't much. And she writes a check, and he says, well, tell your family everything's going to be fine, which was kind of a weird thing to say. Everything is going to be just fine. So she goes in, and she just thought, what a sweet guy this was. What a great guy. So anyway, they're driving the same road a couple of days later, and she tells her family, let's go down here and let me show you where that garage is, where the guy was so nice to me. And she drives by it, and the place, which was very much open 2 days earlier, looks like it had been shut down 2 decades earlier. Mm-hmm. It was totally deserted. It was almost like a ghost mechanic. And again, I think that, and I know some people will say, well, what about the people who get in car accidents or die? Or what about the people who died in 9/11? Not everybody gets a savior. Not everybody gets an angel. That's true. But I think that some people do sometimes. I do think that help is provided in different forms. And sometimes I think a mechanic's just a nice mechanic. And maybe sometimes a dog is an angel. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I think sometimes it's just not good, nice people. But sometimes I think there is a supernatural component to this supernatural interaction where something or someone is sent to help.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful Christmas story. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to happen on Christmas, but it's one of those universal themes, really. And I'm sure that changed her life. I mean, how could it not?
Yeah, it sounded like, she made that she really underlined that when I talked to her, that this wasn't just, it made me feel better that day. It almost sounded like it was a jumping off point for her. It was a pivotal point in her life. And I think that we all have those pivotal points, whether we recognize them at the time. And, when we talk on the shows about something like NDEs, and people talk about the life review and being able to see from the perspective of every other person that you interact with, the impact it has on them. There might have been a day when you were an angel and didn't even know it. Maybe you held the door open for somebody. Maybe you said something as simple but sincere as, I hope you had a nice day. And probably on the other side, there's been a time or two where I've been short with somebody, and maybe I ruined their day. So I think we all need to keep that in mind, that even the smallest interaction can make a big difference for people. And I think this is a great time of year to remember that.
That's so true. Every interaction we have with another person, a stranger, can make all the difference one way or the other. So yeah, we just have to be mindful. Doesn't take much. A smile, a thank you, and you can save a life, literally, without knowing it.
Yep.
Jim, we'll take a quick timeout, come back and discuss some more wonderful Christmas stories around the campfire. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Jim Harold is back just in time for Christmas. Of course, the Paranormal podcast and Jim Harold's Campfire. And he has developed a worldwide audience over the last nearly 20 years. I've got the ghost stories, Jim Harold's Campfire, volumes 1 through 5, plus the True Ghost Story adult coloring book. I'm told he's hard at work on volume 6. And if people want to get involved with Campfire, how do they do it?
Well, if people want to submit their stories in January, we're reopening submissions, jimharold.com/campfire, and they can submit their story there. And we'd love to hear their stories. And also, if they want to listen to the show, they can find us on any of the major podcast apps, Jim Harold's Campfire and the Paranormal Podcast, and of course, jimharold.com.
All right. Let's talk UFOs. I mean, I know we're talking Christmas, but see if we can work in some UFOs into the mix here.
Yeah, this came from Stara. She's one of my listeners. She's from New York State. And this was in the Christmas season of 2021. She had moved from California a few years prior and was not familiar with the Hudson Valley UFOs, for example. And this was the general area she was in. And it was on a Thursday night. And she was watching television in her 3rd floor apartment, and she noticed something unusual outside her living room windows. She said across the street, about 20 feet away and hovering above a street light, she saw 3 large symmetrical lights resembling car headlights. And she said these were distinct from the planes she usually saw at a nearby airport. Very different than typical fixed wing aircraft. Mm-hmm. And she was slightly apprehensive. She peered out her window and observed, and for about a minute, the lights remained stationary. Then the object turned, revealing its shape, and rose above the tree line. It appeared as a large, dark, triangular shape. And Richard, I know that you're familiar with triangular UFOs from Belgium and so forth, that right. UFO flap, Phoenix I think, lights, in the 80s. Yeah. Much larger than a standard aircraft and she said, despite its size, the object made no sound as it glided away towards the Hudson River. And then I think her hairdresser told her that there had been a similar sighting reported in the Poughkeepsie newspaper. And Poughkeepsie is only 25 minutes away from where she lived. And again, this sighting, the Poughkeepsie one, involved 3 white lights forming a triangle captured on video. And as far as UFOs go, I find that triangular UFOs are some of the very, very interesting ones, and they always seem to be very large and very silent. And this fits that profile.
Yeah, yeah. And Hudson Valley is such a hotspot for UFO activity. Any theories as to why Hudson Valley is so frequented by UFOs?
I have no idea. I mean, maybe it's the relative. I mean, it is a little bit for a UFO. It's a very short distance, but maybe proximity to New York City. I don't know the answer to that. But a triangular, and we've had, forgetting his name, David, I can't remember his last name. We've had him on talking about triangular UFOs, and these are particularly fascinating to me because it seems to be a theme that many people see these. I remember years ago when Peter Jennings, right before he passed, I think it was the last major project he did before he got ill, he did that ABC documentary on UFOs, and they had a very interesting account, I think, from a law enforcement officer who saw, just as Starr described it, low-flying, triangular, very large UFO flying and making absolutely no sound. I think David Marler, I think was his name, the gentleman who did a book on triangular UFOs. But those have actually always fascinated me. And then when you think about the Christmas season, people talk about the Christmas star and the lights over Bethlehem. And may there have been a UFO component to that. I don't know about that, but I always find that an interesting thought. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that it did happen in the Christmas season.
Yeah, these triangular craft are just, as you say, they're often immense, like almost
size of a football field.
A football field, exactly. And of course, the Phoenix Lights is one of the great examples of that. Mass sightings too. Often these things are seen. It's not just somebody sees kind of a mysterious light or an orb. Sometimes these things are seen by hundreds of people.
And the thing about the Phoenix Lights, I'll say this, I wish that it had happened a few years later when everybody had smartphones and so forth, because to me, the explanation that was trotted out at the time that it was flares just seems utterly ridiculous. And I believe it was Governor Fife Symington who the next day had a press conference and made light of it and so forth. And then I believe he later came out and said, no, this was real. I saw it too.
Yes.
And it really wasn't something to be making fun of at all.
All right. Let's get back to Christmas here. You have a story about a little girl who had kind of a sick teddy bear.
Oh, yeah. I love this story. And this, again, Richard, this hints back at what I was saying earlier. I do think, and even I think sometimes that for a minute, I'm like, is magic possible? Well, maybe it is, according to this story. This is Courtney from Kansas. And when she and her twin sister were both 5 years old, Courtney had a little teddy bear named Brown Bear. And it had a little music box in its ear. You squeeze it and it makes a noise. Well, you know what it's like when you're a kid and you have a beloved toy. It's just like, I think I had a Curious George when I was a little kid. I absolutely loved it. But anyway, this Brown Bear broke one year and the music wouldn't play. So Courtney told her parents, I don't want anything for Christmas. I just want Brown Bear fixed. I want Santa to take Brown Bear to the North Pole and repair it. Now, of course, Santa Claus is real, but her parents figured that Santa Claus was too busy to bother with this. So her parents tried to set her expectations and said, Courtney, why don't we get you another Brown Bear? Or why don't we get you this? Or why don't we get that? But Courtney was like, no. I want Brown Bear fixed. So anyway, Christmas morning, she left her Brown Bear near the hearth so Santa would be sure not to miss it. And she left a note detailing what she wanted done. So Christmas morning, the kids are running down the stairs. She goes right to Brown Bear. Brown Bear had been moved to the couch. and she pressed Brown Bear's ear. And lo and behold, Richard, it worked. Her parents looked absolutely shocked. And in later years, Courtney said, they're both very techie, very crafty, very good with this kind of stuff. They must have fixed it. And they said, no, we did not fix it. In fact, before she came on the Campfire a few years back and told this story, she called her dad and she said, Dad, come on, level with me. You fixed Brown Bear, didn't you? And Dad said, absolutely not. So was it a little loose wire that fell back into place, or was it a little bit of Christmas magic? My vote is on the latter.
Same, ditto. All right, let's get a little scary now.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some wonderful, feel-good Christmas stories. Do you have any nightmares before Christmas?
Oh, this one's spooky. This is another little girl, but it's not such a sweet story, Richard. This actually was sent over to us. Derek called him from Florida. And he said, like a lot of kids, when him and his sister were little, they would wake up really early and see what Santa had brought. Well, one year, Derek's sister did that. It was very, very dark. She was about 6 this particular year this happened. And she was looking at the toys, and she looked up and suddenly saw a solid black figure standing over her. She said it wasn't flat, it had dimensions. Now, she hadn't seen the figure when she entered the room, and it made absolutely no sound. So it sounds like a shadow figure, Richard. Mm-hmm. She backed away. At first, she thought it was her brother Derek, but she looked into his room, and he was sound asleep. Also, the parents were sound asleep in their beds. She looked back. It was still watching her. Kind of reminds me a little of the Grinch. Mm-hmm. To this day, she's a grown-up. She says, this happened. It wasn't a dream. She was definitely awake. Everyone was asleep. The figure did not move and stayed there until she went back to bed. Now, they did have other paranormal experiences in this house, but that was the only time they saw this shadow figure. Now, can you imagine that as a small child? You want to catch a glimpse of Santa. Instead, you see this imposing, terrifying shadow figure. Again, that is a nightmare before Christmas, and that's a pretty rough memory for
that would
Christmas.
Put me off my Christmas pudding. Yes,
that's right.
Well, if Santa Claus is real, why can't Krampus be real?
Yeah. Well, I think there is a spirit of good, and I think there's a spirit of Santa, and I mean. And I think we can, I look at these Christmas themes and generalize them to things through the year. And Richard, I'm sure you've interviewed people over the years who have said, oh, Richard, there's no such thing as evil. There's lower vibrations.
Yeah, lower vibrations, right.
Lower vibrations. Right. There's no real evil. And it's like, are you sure about that? Are you absolutely sure? So do I think there are very beautiful and good spirits attached with Christmas? I absolutely do. And I think that they win out. But I also think there's some nasty ones out there, and maybe they make an appearance even under the Christmas tree.
100%. All right, another time out, back with more of my conversation with the one and only Jim Harold.
What would it feel like to reclaim your health, your vitality, to sleep deeply, to live fully, to address health at the root, at the cellular level, so that your body can detect damage where you have it? Imagine living younger, longer, having the energy to do what you want to do when you want to do it. Discomfort fading away. ASEA Redox Supplement harnesses the power of your body to heal itself, giving you the ability to power.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship. Enjoy the complete unedited episodes and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.
Your potential. This is one of the most profound health, athletic, and anti-aging discoveries of our lifetime, and we need the world to know about it. If you want to learn more about ASEA, visit strangeplanet.teamasea.com, strangeplanet.teamasea.com, and be sure to text or call my colleague and friend Lynn at 443-254-6024, 443-254-6024 to order or for additional information. ASEA Redox Supplement. It's truly wellness redefined.
Jim Harold, and if you want to subscribe to the Paranormal Podcast or Jim Harold's Campfire, go to jimharold.com, jimharold.com, or if you have a story you'd like to offer up for consideration on Campfire, you can get a hold of Jim there as well. jimharold.com, is it /Campfire?
Correct. jimharold.com/campfire. And we take stories. The thing that I love about the show so much is the international component. And we've had, I had a show recently. We had people from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the States, the UK. We get people all over, and I just love that international flavor to it, that we can do that. And but the commonalities are much more great than the differences in terms of spooky stories and the things we hear. But it's just great, and we love to talk with people all over the world.
All right. So we had maybe an encounter with Krampus, hard to say. What about an encounter with Santa?
Yeah, this one actually has a little bit of a twist that's interesting. This goes back to about 1980, and Evan was 10 and his sister was 8, and they lived in Annapolis, Maryland. Their father was a naval officer and taught at the U.S. Naval Academy. So one December night, Evan and his sister, well, they had an extraordinary event. They were returning home, and they were walking out of the cars, and they noticed that Santa Claus was walking in the neighborhood. And he was a very kind of like legitimate looking Santa Claus, not like the helpers, but he looked like the real Santa Claus. So anyway, initially this Santa was not heading towards them, but they caught his eye, and Santa suddenly changed course and approached the siblings. Now, what made this so fascinating was Santa's familiarity with him. He greeted Evan and his sister by their full names, asked them if they'd been good, and casually walked away. And this brief but perplexing interaction left a lasting impression on Evan, because they did not recognize this Santa as anyone they knew. Now, ironically, Evan has become one of Santa's helpers. He's a professional Santa Claus. And he says that usually children will recognize the familiar faces behind a helper, a Santa helper. Like, oh, you're really so-and-so. He says, in fact, kids will see him and they'll say, oh, you're really Evan. Not the real Santa Claus, of course, because the real Santa can't be everywhere. He has to have helpers. That makes sense. But this Santa was a complete stranger to them. It didn't resemble any local families, any local dads. Plus, while his family certainly wasn't poor, he says, if you hire a Santa Claus to do something like that, the present day, it could be $150, $200. And his parents certainly weren't the type of people that would drop that kind of cash to do that. They immediately questioned their parents and said, did you arrange this? Did you set this up? Their parents said no. And interestingly, Evan and his sister remember this event. Years later, up until today, their parents don't remember it at all. So this mysterious encounter with Santa, it really influenced Evan. Sounds like it probably led to him becoming a Santa. And it's a weird but puzzling memory. And it just, sometimes you wonder, I even at my age, I'm like, well, who knows? Who knows? It could be some more of that Christmas magic, Richard.
Well, I believe in Saint Nicholas. I mean, Saint Nicholas was a real person. He was a saint,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he come back?
Yeah, I think it's such a nice thing to have that little room for wonder. I think we need more room for wonder in our lives, more room for magic in our lives, because it's kind of tough being a human.
Yeah, I don't want to live in a world without wonder. I don't want to live in a world where there's no chance that Bigfoot exists, where there's no such thing as
exactly
ghosts or unidentified flying objects. What a boring world that would be.
I agree. Yeah, I look at people like, for example, like I've seen recently some interviews with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Brilliant guy. But boy, that must be boring.
What a bummer. Yeah, you're walking out under the night sky and the beautiful stars, and it's very romantic. And then he tells you, those things probably burned out 3 billion years ago.
Yeah. It's so funny because I just saw a clip he did about the tides and saying, well, they're not really coming in. We're the ones that are, and then that's great. But I think it's more romantic to have a tide coming in and all of those things. Yeah, it's true.
So we heard about the Christmas dog. Do you have a Christmas cat story? We got to be fair to the cat lovers.
Yeah, this is interesting because this story was from Chuck from Alabama, and his mom and sister were working at a women's shelter in Missouri. Now, Chuck was in college, and he had come home for the holidays, and he was invited to go over to the shelter to help out. It was an old building from the 1800s, a 2-story red brick revival house. Now, he said there was a strange feeling about the place as soon as he walked in. So his sister was working there. He had a great visit with her for a couple of hours. And as he was leaving, a gray cat came to sit at his sister's feet and started playing with her feet, biting at them and different things. And the cat looked around, and Chuck said he saw this cat in vivid detail, just like if you see a real life flesh and blood cat right in front of you. He could see it breathing. He could see its hair. He could see it vanish into thin air. And his sister said, did you see something? And he said, yes, I saw a gray cat. And she said, well, there wasn't one there, but it's really odd because the director of our shelter has been complaining to his staff because they've been letting this gray cat in, and they all swear, we didn't let any gray cat in. There is no gray cat. But people have reported seeing this gray cat. In fact, Chuck's mom had thought there was a gray cat, the ghost cat that didn't exist, and actually brought cat food for it one time. Now, weeks later, Chuck was back right at Christmas there, and his mom asked him to come by the shelter and help her move donation boxes. He took the first box upstairs, and while walking up the steps, he found an ornament on the stairs. He continued upstairs, picked up the ornament, and put it back on a nearby tree so no one would trip on it. He carried several more boxes upstairs, but then again, he found that same ornament that he put on a tree back on the stairs. And there's no way that it could have been there. And oh, by the way, what was that ornament of? It was of a gray cat.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, of a gray cat. And he went, his mom was working in the other room and said, did you put that ornament on the stairs? It keeps popping up on the stairs. She said, no, I've been doing my paperwork here for the last hour. There was no one else in the building. It was a wooden ornament of a gray cat playing with a ball. And she said Same thing kept happening to her. That same ornament kept popping on and off the tree. So I guess it was a Christmas ghost cat who kept showing up at this shelter. And again, it goes back to the history piece, right? Place built in the 1800s, a lot of history. Historic places, they've been around for a long time. More things happen. And I guess it extends to cats.
I love it. I love it. Do you have a Herald family tradition at Christmas at your place?
Actually, it's kind of funny. We have a lot of traditions. My wife is of Italian lineage, so there's a lot of different cookies and treats and bakery and all that great stuff that are made. And when I married her, I was thin, and not so much now. But one thing that we've took to playing, and I think it might be of either German or Polish origin, is the pickle game.
Pickle
and
game?
what you do, are you familiar with the pickle game?
No, I love pickles, but I'm not familiar with the
yes,
game.
Yes, it is. You take an ornament, and it was introduced to us by actually my wife's best friend, unfortunately, who passed. Her family was of Polish origin, and they used to play this. And you take a pickle ornament, and you hide it on the tree Christmas Eve, and then you have the kids try to find the ornament against each other, and then whoever finds the ornament gets a pre-Christmas gift, like socks or something like that. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Richard, our kids now are adults. My youngest is a junior in college. My oldest has graduated from college and is continuing her education to go on to become an optometrist. So they're both adults. So you put this pickle in the middle of your Christmas tree, and we have a really nice Christmas tree. We have years of ornaments that we built up over the last 20 some years, and just things you would never want broken. And you hide this pickle tree, and these two adult girls are basically playing NFL football, trying to block each other out of the way to get the pickle first. But it's a beloved tradition. I think that's one of my favorite traditions in the Herald household, the pickle game for Christmas Eve.
That's wonderful. The pickle game.
Yeah, it's like rugby.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think we got time for one more. A Christmas gift that didn't want to be given.
Yeah, and this reminds me of something called Jot. Mary Rose Barrington. Now, you've probably more than likely over the years had interviewed her at one point or the other. Many times. Yes, and anyway, she talked about Jot, just one of those things, whereas an item gets lost and it reappears in a place it shouldn't be. And this is a story. This was back in 2018, and the story's from Julie from Texas, and they were in Germany and were spending a lot of time attending those beautiful Christmas markets they have. That's something I wish we had over here in the States. But anyway, she was at a little antique shop, and she decided to buy a cross pendant and a cute little bracelet to give to her two sisters for Christmas. A few days later, she was packing things up to send to her sisters, found the bracelet, but the cross pendant was gone. So she thought she must have dropped it on the way to the car. She sent something else, forgot about it, and moved on. Later, her husband found the items in his breast pocket, but thought it was weird because he wouldn't have usually put them there, but that's where it ended up, the cross pendant and the bracelet. So anyway, she found these things, right? She put them in a specific drawer so they wouldn't get lost to send the following year. No thought of the supernatural, just something mislaid. So then fast forward to Christmas time, 2019, she looked for them in the drawer, and they weren't there either, this drawer that she put them in. She was really second-guessing herself at this point. So in the summer of 2020, they were moving from Germany to Texas, packing up. Their daughter helped them unpack when they arrived in Texas, and she found the bracelet and the cross. So Julie puts them in a jewelry drawer, very deliberately not to lose them. She said, "I have them. They're here." She told both her daughter and her husband. Christmas 2020. This time the bracelet's there, but the cross is gone.
Oh, man.
Then she says, "This must be supernatural." So she sent the bracelet to her one sister and a different cross to the other sister. A month before she called into Campfire, she was packing for a trip to Mexico. She packed very, very carefully. In Mexico, a vendor was selling beaded glass strings. She bought 2 of them, and she stuck them in a zipper pouch in her purse. She gets home, she takes out these glass chains, and tucked in a little ball of the 2 chains inside them was the cross pendant.
Oh, man.
She put a chain on it, and now she wears it because it clearly doesn't want to be given away, as her husband says. That cross must have been meant for Julie because it was sticking with her all the way. So that was the gift that didn't want to be given.
Wow. That's a great story. I would love to be able, I would love to see that cross pendant. I'd love to touch it.
Maybe it had some special significance and it knew that it was meant for Julie, you know? Maybe that's what was going on, but it just refused to be given away.
Wow. Jim, always a delight spending time with you, especially over the holiday season. And you are a gift that keeps giving. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it. You're one of the greatest supporters of what I do, and I thank you so much for that. And I wish you, your family, and your fantastic audience the merriest of Christmas and the happiest of New Year's.
And the same to all of your Campfire and Paranormal podcast listeners, and to you and your wonderful family. God bless you. Merry Christmas. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.